Hello, and welcome back from the weekend. We had a very exciting one, going to visit a potential future puppy on Friday. So that was very exciting for us. And we are bringing home a Pomeranian puppy. Um, of course, we have an existing dog and had to travel with him, and there are a lot of things to think about when you're traveling with a dog. So that's what I thought we'd talk about today is some things that could have made our trip easier and could help you if you plan to ever travel by car with a dog. Of course, if you're traveling via plane or other modes of transport, there are other things to consider. But we're talking about a short weekend road trip, and there are still a lot of things to think about. So, um, so let's do it. Um, First of all, the Pom puppies were so cute. They're so tiny. They're only 5 weeks old, and yeah. I have to post some pictures on my Facebook page. Share some of those because they're adorable, and there's still a few weeks yet till they're able to come home. But oh my goodness, it's gonna be exciting. Dizzy did not get to meet them because they're too young for that, and also he can be a little overwhelming at first, and requires some management. Speaking of management, we drove to Seattle for this little trip, and we stayed in a hotel. And I thought I was so prepared, and yet oh my gosh, I don't know if the hotel just happens to be more noisy than we've experienced in the past because this wasn't our first trip. But Dizzy was barking at every little sound, and there just didn't seem to be a break in the sounds. It was going on all day, all night, and I got so little sleep, which is why I am just so drained today. Um, but alas, it is what it is, and there were some lessons learned. So so I'd like to share that with you. Um, ooh, don't do that, computer. There we go. Yeah, so some things that I just always like to think about if I'm going to be traveling with a dog. I've taken some trips with other dogs, client dogs, and every dog is an individual, and they all have their individual considerations. And so I like to start there. Is first of all, maybe an obvious one, but just considering if the dog that you're thinking about traveling with, if travel's appropriate for them at all, because it's not for all dogs. We kind of take it for granted that dogs are pretty easygoing and they can kind of handle everything we throw at them, but it's not always the case. And so just making sure you even consider, there are babies, and they're our emotional support in a lot of cases, and we like to have them with us. But sometimes the novelty and the excitement, or the particular place that you might be going to, wouldn't be a good fit for them. And even though we'd like to have them, I like to start there. It's just consider, are they the right fit for this trip? um and one of those considerations that doesn't isn't always obvious, especially talking about traveling by car, is a lot of dogs get car sick. And just because they're not actually getting sick in the car, doesn't mean that they're not feeling it. I personally, I get motion sickness when I try reading in the car, or I mean, boats are a big one, but even reading in the car, I'll feel queasy, and just because I don't get sick doesn't mean that it's not kind of an awful experience for me. And a lot of dogs experience this too. And so, if there's potential at all that might be the case, that would be maybe a dog who's not a good candidate for road trip travel. Other things might be, can they be left alone? Managing a dog who struggles to be left alone at home is one thing, but when you're on the road and say you have to, I don't know, run into a store and the dog's not allowed, or you have to, there's a thing that you want to do on the trip, and the dog just can't come along. Can they be left? Can they be left crated? Are they going to be safe to be left in your Airbnb or hotel, or camping or where, wherever you're staying, is that going to be safe and comfortable for them? Um, let's see. Yeah, that's just kind of thinking through all of the possibilities um, that you might run into. And of course, you can't always think of everything, as I learned this weekend. um, but secondly, still in the just in the planning stage or the considering a trip stage is about dog friendly lodging. And I don't just mean, is the hotel dog friendly or is the Airbnb friendly, but is it an environment that's suitable for your dog? Um, and that's when I'm going to get into something with Dizzy. We've taken several trips, I would say, and we have stayed in hotels and we have stayed in Airbnbs before, and even stayed, with friends, um, and usually he's pretty easygoing. He's not. He loves to explore new places, and he's very friendly. And I haven't had to consider the noise factor, but we can always find, a dog approved place. But um, staying in a hotel, when a dog like Dizzy is not used to kind of like apartment style living where there's noises occurring just outside your defined space, um, it's yeah, that can be that can be a lot. And so I just didn't think about it because, we like I said, we'd stayed in hotels before and we've taken other trips and stayed in other places which had less noise. So I didn't think too much about the sound, or I didn't think it would be as big of a problem as it was. Um, and one thing that we did do that can help quite a bit in some cases is we brought a little Bluetooth speaker, intending to play white noise anytime there wasn't other background noise able to be going on in the hotel room. I mean, TVs can work in some cases, but I can't sleep with the TV on. So I wanted to have something to play white noise or calm music or just something to kind of help dampen the sounds from the hallway. And we did that, and this time it just wasn't enough. um, it's worked wonderfully in the past, but yeah, I don't know. Dizzy just wasn't having it, so yeah, he kept us up all night. And luckily, Dizzy's the kind of dog where when he does hear a sound, he doesn't go straight into the loud barking. So he starts off with the calm little woof woof, and it quickly escalates. But luckily for us, luckily for our neighbors, um, we were able to stop him before he started barking and disrupting other guests, which is really nice, but something to consider. Um, but it was enough to continue to wake me up or keep me up, like right in that moment where I was about to fall asleep. Like he'd go off again, and so that was a struggle. But having some way to kind of help dampen the sound, whether that's a fan or a speaker or just the TV, if that works for you, is a really good idea. But if your dog is kind of sensitive to sounds like that, maybe don't even consider a hotel. There are other types of lodging, like inns that maybe have separate units or cabins, if you're into like woodsy area trips. But I really love to look for Airbnbs, dog-friendly Airbnbs, because usually you just have a lot more privacy and a lot less sound that can upset a dog. And so just considering where you're staying, the sound is a big factor. At least it is for us. um, but some other things that can help with that, and just with your dog's general ability to be a good dog with you on a trip, is just remembering that the basics that you provide at home, they're kind of even more important on the road. But they can kind of fall into like a low priority category, if we don't make them more important. And those being your exercise. They still need that exercise, and especially when there's a lot of novelty going on. There's a lot of stimulation for them. For some dogs, that'll wear them out on their own. And if you have a dog like that, oh, I'm so jealous. That's wonderful for you. But for those of us whose dogs, that's just not going to cut it. It can really help you if you have set aside time for them to get their exercise. Scope out the area right when you first arrive. Make sure you know where there might be some green spaces, better yet, some fenced in parks, or safe places where they're able to really run, because doing some walks, some snifaris, that's really wonderful. But it's even better if they can really go, stretch their legs. And we didn't have that on this trip. At least not too much, we didn't have access to it before the first night, which was the worst. But the next day, we were able to find some spaces to let Dizzy run his heart out. Which helped. but yeah, making sure, a lot of times the way that I used to travel, like I would try and pack as much fun stuff for me. This was before I had a dog, but I would pack so many activities into the space that I had, and I would schedule my travel such that I was leaving as soon as I got off work, for the departure, and then I would stay as long as I possibly can, such that I was arriving home like almost even right before I had to go to work next. So just making sure that when you're traveling with a dog, you're leaving time to make sure that they've got their exercise needs met. They've got their time to cuddle with you. That can be a need. So if you've got a cuddly dog, making sure that need is met. And another thing that can really help, which also not always obvious, is if you have the time to do a really hardcore hike or just a long game of fetch or running or whatever your dog's activity of choice is, if you have the time to get a lot of exercise in the day before your trip, that can really help too. It can help them sleep in the car if you've got a lot of car time. It can help them relax if you're arriving late and you need them to sleep. Sometimes, getting them their daily exercise, of course, is important. But if you really outdo yourself and get a lot of exercise in, they can have, I sometimes refer to this as like a hangover. They can be so tired, and it can last for days. And if you've got a busy travel schedule, that can make all the difference. And that was a mistake I made this time. I just didn't go out and get Dizzy any extra exercise, and I think that really would have helped us this time. So just want to check in with you guys. Have you taken trips like this with your dog/dogs? And if you have there been any, have you run into any troubles? Anything that, like a lesson learned, that you'd like to share with me and everyone else? Let me know in the comments. Or perhaps it was something that you're just like, yeah, it was trouble, but I don't know what to do about it next time. Maybe we can all help. Let me know if that's the case. Because I mean, before I was a dog trainer, I was a travel agent. Like, travel was my whole identity, and I just lived to go places. A lot of international travel, and I haven't done a ton of travel, at least no international travel, in the last, maybe 7 or 8 years. I don't know. I don't know exactly, but it's been a while. But I like to travel, and now that I've got a dog, he just brings in some extra considerations. So yeah, exercise. I mean, that one is huge. That's really the first thing to look at. But also, I talk a lot about enrichment, and this is just as important on the road too. So I've talked a lot about, like, how I like to feed Dizzy in Kongs or food puzzles, and that can be a lot of stuff to bring. And if you like to be a minimalistic packer like me, there are other things you can do. So we did bring Kongs, but we left the food puzzles at home this time. And instead, I brought some old t-shirts that we were ready to throw away. You know, they're not good enough quality to donate, but it gave Dizzy an extra thing to do to get to the Kong, as I would just put the Kongs in a t-shirt and tie it up so that he had to like chew and rip it open to get to his Kong. I have always, and this is funny, when you get a new set of sheets, I know this is random, but when you get a new set of sheets, often they'll come in like basically a little drawstring bag made out of the sheet material. And we happen to have some of those. I always save them because I don't know, they might come in handy. They never do until now. So I love these because just like the t-shirts, they make a really, really great 1 or 2 time use thing to put a dog's meal in that they have to work to get out. So that's really cool enrichment, disposable enrichment that you can bring along on a trip. And if you don't have the sheets or the t-shirts, you know, you can bring other stuff like paper bags, save up old, oh my gosh, toilet paper and paper towel rolls. I mean, I save all of ours just for times like this, then that it might make a great one-time use thing. I don't have to bring it home. And it gives my dog a way to like work his brain, get out some energy. And the more energy you use, the better they're going to be for you. So yeah, making sure that they still have enrichment on the road. And I don't just mean with food, but food's the big one, right? Like having them work for their food. And so when you're thinking about how to provide that enrichment with their food on the road, food can be its own consideration for travel, right? So there are a lot of ways you can feed your dog, right? A lot of us just feed kibble. You might be feeding some wet dog food, whether that's canned or like a fresh refrigerated or frozen dog food. There's feeding raw. There's freeze dried. I mean, there's all sorts of different like food that we can be feeding. And if you happen to feed using one of the more perishable items, that can be tricky on the road. So if you want to keep your dog strictly on the diet that they normally have, making sure that the place you're staying has a refrigerator and or a freezer if it's a longer trip and they need to stay frozen. Normally, I keep Dizzy's Kongs frozen until he's ready to eat them for the most part. But we had only a refrigerator on this trip, so if we had stayed for a longer trip, if it was more than 2 days, I would have really had to think about how to handle that food that he had. But yeah, making sure that you've got a cooler that's packed cold enough to keep it fresh until your destination. Making sure that your food stays safe, bug free, for the duration of your trip. An alternative to that is you can make things more easy on yourself by maybe feeding a different food for the trip. Now, it's easy for me to do this with Dizzy because he normally gets half of the fresh/frozen food for his daily meals, and the other half is like an air dried or a freeze dried raw, like kibble style, but it's not kibble food. So if I had wanted to, I could have made this easier on myself and just left the fresh wet food at home, and just brought the dry food because it's less perishable, and that could have made things a lot easier. But I wanted him to have the option of the Kongs, and I just wasn't sure about if we had the freezer, and so I brought both, which it's messy, and I think next time I'll double check about that freezer or just bring dry food. You can still do the enrichment with the dry food. In fact, in some ways it can be easier with, scatter feeding or feeding them on walks, and but but really just, yeah, thinking about, would changing the makeup of their actual meals for the trip make things easier for you? And still work for your dog. Now, I kind of went into like how Dizzy gets multiple types of food because if the diet that they're used to is pretty close to what you'd feed on the road anyway, then you've really got nothing to worry about. But if your dog is used to eating one thing and one thing only, then it might be you might want to rethink the changing the diet on the road, or at least start to introduce it gradually as you would anytime that you're switching dog foods, just to make sure that they're not getting upset tummies because, oh boy, upset tummies are not fun to deal with on the road. Uh, Dizzy has dealt with a lot of that. He's got a lot of sensitivities and food allergies too. And that's trouble enough when you're at home. But when you're on the road, especially if, like us, you're staying in a hotel, perhaps several floors up, where if they suddenly have to go, you're either cleaning up a mess in the room or, oh my gosh, heaven forbid that it happens in the lobby or in the elevator. But if they're not able to get to a bathroom fast enough, that can be a mess. So yeah, making sure, I mean, if your dog is already feeling icky, another consideration, like, is there an alternative for them to stay home, maybe stay with a family member or a sitter? But definitely don't do anything with their diet that might cause an issue on your trip because I don't want that for you. So yeah, just considering you've got options with food, but it's worth the time to really think it through. So yes, food, exercise, enrichment, all those very, very important. Some things that can help too are, does your dog benefit from having things that smell like him or smell like home? So bringing along your dog's dog bed or perhaps just a towel or a mat that already smells like them can sometimes provide some comfort for dogs, especially dogs who tend to get a little anxious or struggle with novel environments. Definitely bringing something along that's going to help them feel a little bit more comforted. And if they like to cuddle, of course, comfort can come in the form of just being able to be next to you, and just that relational comfort can be really good and can help. That one's pretty obvious, but yeah, I just like to mention it because they're such emotional creatures, and they need us as much as we need them. And sometimes we can get distracted by the excitement of whatever you're doing on this trip. And I don't want them to get forgotten or have that need be forgotten at all. Another thing, less commonly thought of, maybe perhaps even less commonly used if you're not used to it, but for dogs who do deal with any kind of anxiety or like overstimulation in a new environment like that, you can talk to your vet about medication, and this can really, really, really help a lot. Even if it's a short-term, short-acting medication, just to help your dog get through adjusting to being in a new environment with you. Yes, of course, there are, I mean, there are lots of options, and I'm not a vet, not here to give any medical advice, but I do recommend that if you think that your dog might benefit, definitely worth at least having a conversation with your veterinarian. Because yeah, it's been surprising to me just in my own journey of learning about dogs, really, how they struggle with a lot more than I ever thought they did. I'll put it that way. It was my impression, and I don't know if this is just me or what, but it just always seems like dogs can handle anything. And I've learned now that there are a lot of ways that we can help them a lot more than I knew of, and then that I was aware of. And so, yeah, medication for dogs, it is a thing, and it can absolutely um, help them have a better time on the road. So yeah, again, your vet is the one to talk to about that if it's something you'd like to consider. I get asked a lot about like over the counter type supplements and things, and I will say this: I'm skeptical because generally there are a lot more studies and evidence to support the benefits of having prescribed medication, um, much less so when it comes to over the counter stuff. And so, not here to say that that stuff doesn't work. It's just that if you haven't if you haven't used it before and haven't tested it with your dog, um, I would say, if you want to, if you feel like you're needing to rely on something like that for a trip, test it out beforehand, or at least talk to your vet about that too, because they can be kind of pricey, and if it's something that doesn't really work, doesn't have a lot of evidence, or at least isn't going to work for your dog, that can be a lot of money down the drain. And if it doesn't work, if it's the first time that you're trying it out, and your trip is only so many days long, you can end up quite disappointed. So those things are out there, and I have friends who suggest who have used like things like CBD treats, that are on the market now for dogs, which is funny. I haven't used them myself, but I know people who do, and say that they can work. So I mean, I might even be open to considering that for Dizzy next time if we find ourselves in a situation where we have to stay in a potentially noisy environment because oh this girl needs sleep. I don't function very well on on little sleep. Um and so yeah, if we want to make the most of vacation days, I want to make sure that everybody is able to have their needs met and have a great time. So that goes for Dizzy and the new dog, which we haven't for sure decided on a name yet. So if you've got ideas, we are open to suggestions. We would love to have a name that's like music slash jazz slash dancing slash Lindy Hop sort of themed. Dizzy was named after Dizzy Gillespie, the trumpeter. And so yeah, still thinking about a name, but yeah, next time that we travel, we're gonna have 2 dogs. So the more dogs that you've got on the road with you, the more complicated things can get. Of course, the more dogs that you've got living with you, the more complicated things can get. But just doubly so when you're in an unusual environment that the dogs aren't used to. So, yeah, we'll have a whole nother little being to consider her needs, and it'll be interesting. Oh my gosh, I'm a little afraid that of the first couple of months and not getting enough sleep, because I know how puppies can be, but it's different when you're ready for it, when you're like, okay, I signed up for this, we're gonna get through it, I'm ready. Whereas when you're like on a trip and you're excited and then like all of a sudden you're not getting sleep that you thought you were gonna get, ooh, that can be a lot more disappointing. So yeah, let me know if did any of this might be something that could help you in the future, something that maybe you haven't thought about. Is anyone else having to travel right now? We don't I mean, we don't go anywhere these days, I think, like a lot of us. But this was extenuating circumstances, we'll say, and so we were able to combine a couple trips, make it really brief. But yeah, is anyone else traveling right now or have anything coming up? I know a lot of people had trips postponed over the last year, and who knows with the way things are, those trips might be coming up. So that is why I kind of just wanted to like talk through the struggles that we had, in the hopes that maybe it will help someone else work out the kinks and have a really smooth, enjoyable trip the next time that it happens, you know. Um, so yeah, I think I might need a nap today because this weekend I've got a lot of sleep to catch up on. um, and this guy, ooh, can you see him? Yeah, he's back there. He's got some sleep to catch up on too. Um, so, all right, I will let you guys go for now. And later this week, I was going to talk through how to choose a dog. Talk about dog breeds. Dog breeds can be really fun to talk about, and there are so many of them. So we're gonna maybe get into that Wednesday and Friday. And until then, have a wonderful, wonderful week, you guys. I will see you next time.